Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Jill Newbron at tonight's top stories from East Asia. Hard-hit economies of East Asia assessing the impact of President Trump's first 100 days in office. The American leader claiming his team the most successful of any U.S. administration. China is said to be creating a list of U.S. goods exempt from Beijing's tit-for-tat tariffs after talks with industry insiders. And investors look for signs of stability in Beijing's economic data, but factory activity comes in at a near two-year low as tariffs bite. South Korea believes some 600 North Korean soldiers have been killed fighting for Russia, as it notes a major improvement in their combat capabilities. Ahead on East Asia Tonight, concerns over cross-border scam centers despite efforts to crack down on these operations. CNA's Taiwan correspondent Victoria Jen spoke with one recent escapee on his harrowing experience. It's been 100 days since U.S. President Donald Trump's return to the White House. In that time, the global economic order has arguably been upended and U.S. alliances frayed, nowhere more so than in East Asia, where getting deals done with the U.S. leader is an economic imperative. Grace Shin reports.
For Donald Trump, executive orders on tariffs are about leveling the playing field in global trade that the president says is stacked against the United States. The steepest tariffs are on Chinese imports, of up to 145%. But China has hit back with its own 125% levies on American products. Both sides say they're open to talks, but neither have pulled through. The Chinese government says it will fight to the end and retaliate against what it calls bullying and blackmail. It has reached out to East Asian neighbors, the foreign minister holding talks in March with South Korean and Japanese counterparts to discuss the need for stronger economic cooperation. President Xi Jinping recently paid a visit to Southeast Asia, also hard hit by U.S. levies. He unveiled his vision of an Asian family, dubbing Trump's tariffs as external confrontation. None of the countries visited have agreed with China to take a united front in opposing the U.S. tariffs. Beijing has added incentive because it's trying to stem a slowdown in its economy and become less reliant on exports. On Wednesday, it passed the first of its kind private economy promotion law, stipulating measures to promote fair market competition vis-a-vis the state sector. Close U.S. allies, Japan and South Korea, were also not spared from Trump's Liberation Day measures. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba warning the U.S.'s forecast of 25% duty on cars and steel, a mainstay of Japan's export-heavy economy, could undermine the economy. A sharp fall in steel exports to the U.S. in March, testimony to that possibility. Tokyo has unveiled emergency economic measures since, including supporting corporate financing and stimulating consumption. South Korea, also slapped with the 25% levy on all aluminum, steel, and auto imports, has seen its car and steel shipments fall sharply. Semiconductor exports, which remain exempt from U.S. tariffs, saw a 10% jump compared to last April. A South Korean delegation has headed to Washington yet again to engage in talks. Officials have been arguing that Seoul invested more than any other country in the United States in the past 2 years, pointing to how it created 20,000 jobs in the U.S. back in 2023. All three key East Asian nations, economically and geopolitically vital to Washington, are urging President Trump to rethink his tariffs.
Well, for more, we're joined by Adrian Ang Yu-jin, Research Fellow and Coordinator of the United States Program at the Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies. Adrian, 100 days ago, we spoke right on this topic. Now, you said then that there's more continuity than differences in Trump's East Asia. How has that panned out in terms of his approach to East Asia and the impact on these countries?
Hi, Jill. Good to be back.
100 days later, we've seen that there has been continuity in Trump's policies when it comes to defense. But in economics, as right, sort of the intro has shown, his tariff policy is a radical departure from the last, 80 or so years of U.S. economic and trade policy.
Right. So you mentioned economically, maybe the report card is a bit more in the red. So these tariffs, do they risk alienating East Asian allies at a time when perhaps he might need them in the future? Or do you feel that there's a gradual optimism that ultimately the tariff toll might be less, the bark worse than the bite?
I think there's going to be serious problems with the tariffs because I think countries are coming to the realization that they have limited room for negotiation with the Trump administration on tariffs. So if we look at the example of Vietnam, they were one of the first, right, to send a delegation to Washington to negotiate for lower tariffs, and they had, come prepared to offer a whole host of concessions from, right, allowing the Trump organization to build resorts in Vietnam to buying more goods from the US. And it has not proven to be very effective in convincing the Trump administration to lower tariff rates.
Now, I want to talk about China and bring in China's response so far to the perceived containment by the U.S. We're in this game of who blinks first, but do you see a softening of that tone?
So right now, both are in a standoff, as you said, right? Both are in a staring competition in sort of political science terms. They're both playing a game of chicken, right? Neither wants to be the first side to concede and to demonstrate weakness. So over the past week, we've had the situation where President Trump claims that China and the US are in negotiations over the tariffs, whereas Beijing has come back and sternly, right, sort of refuted the notion that they are in any sort of negotiations.
Yeah, at least when it comes to, pardon me, defense and security, Trump seems to have been reaching out to his East Asian allies, for example, the Philippines. How do you think Beijing might interpret this with regards to particularly the South China Sea as well as the Taiwan issue?
So with regard to the Philippines and the South China Sea, China has not taken too kindly to that. It has once again seen, right, sort of U.S. actions, guarantees for the Philippines as external interference, right? So far, they have not sort of tied that to Taiwan yet.
Don't you think, though, that it's perhaps a golden opportunity for China perhaps to step in and fill this vacuum somewhat created by the U.S., inserting its leadership perhaps into East Asia more? How is that panning out?
Yes. So we just saw that President Xi Jinping visited Southeast Asia. He visited Malaysia, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And I think part of his visit to Southeast Asia was to convey the message that China is a reliable partner and interlocutor for the US, right? So filling in the vacuum for, what China claims is an unreliable United States. And this, again, right, has been done, but with the US severely damaging its image, its brand, its soft power, not just with the tariffs, but also with actions like, cutting off US AID aid to Southeast Asian countries.
So you think the U.S. doesn't have legs to stand on when it comes to convincing its allies of the purpose of this shakeup, of the future of the global system? What do you think?
I think it is going to be very difficult. So this is going to, once again, increase East Asian countries' propensity to hedge against the United States, now especially economically. right, I think we're going to see further moves for greater regional economic integration, right, with RCEP and with CPTPP.
So in a way, we can say that there has been something that's maybe done right by the Trump administration when it comes to East Asia, in the sense that it's forced a sort of lattice work among East Asian countries, forcing them to rely more on each other and building up their own agency. Talk to us about that.
Yes. So that is again, right, sort of one of the few avenues of continuity that we have seen from Trump 1.0 into the Biden administration, and I think now into, right, the second Trump administration, where the Trump administration is pushing for, right, allies and partners in the region to increase their share of military spending, right, to take up an increased share of the military burden. So we already see, right, sort of Japan, right, increasing the defense spending and planning also to do more. And I'm sure we'll see, right, whichever government takes office after Australia has its elections will do the same as well. And the same with South Korea and the Philippines.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now, but thank you so much, Adrian Ang Eugene from the Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, RSIS. Japan and South Korea are sending top officials to Washington, aiming for relief from Trump tariffs. It marks round 2 of trade talks with the U.S. for both key allies, each hoping to clinch concessions before a pause in the levies expires early July. Japan's tariff envoy Ryosei Akazawa is hoping to achieve what he calls a win-win relationship. He's meeting U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and other officials after initial talks earlier this month. Mr. Akazawa says Japanese firms are bleeding losses daily under current duties and reiterated Tokyo's stance of wanting all tariffs scrapped. Japan faces 25% tariffs on cars, steel and aluminium, plus a 10% baseline tariff, down from 24%. Tokyo could offer some concessions to secure relief, including buying more American corn and soybeans, as well as changes to vehicle import procedures, as well as co-developing LNG projects in Alaska. Meanwhile, South Korea's industry ministry officials are also heading to Washington, where they will focus on easing duties on autos and steel in talks with U.S. trade representatives. The visit follows a prior round of meetings where both countries agreed to shape a potential trade package. South Korea says formal negotiations are yet to start, but the groundwork is being laid for talks that may stretch beyond its June government transition. For now, though, Washington's 25% tariffs over Seoul remain on hold, on top of a 10% blanket levy and another 25% duties on auto and steel. Well, staying on the issue of global trade tensions, China's Xinhua News quotes President Xi as saying authorities China reportedly exempts some U.S.-made products from its 125% levies. Roland Lim is here to tell us a lot more on that.
Thanks, Jill. Now, Reuters reports that the Chinese government has been quietly notifying companies of a so-called whitelist, but it is still unclear what products are currently on the list. Now, this comes after surveys were reportedly sent out by authorities to companies to gauge the impact of the tariff war. Last week, China moved to exempt selected pharmaceutical, ethane, microchips, and aircraft engines from its 125% duties imposed earlier this month. Now, Beijing has yet to comment on the developments, but some say it is a sign that the trade war between the world's 2 largest economies could be easing.
All right, so quite a twist, Roland, in the U.S.-China trade spat. There's been no official announcement as yet, just this quiet outreach to select firms. What's actually going on here?
Yeah, it is quite significant, but also subtle at the same time. I mean, Chinese are signaling flexibility when it comes to formally backing down, but They are, by creating this covert exemption list of sorts, covering things like pharmaceutical, aircraft engine parts, microchips. I mean, it is allowing its critical imports to be protected, but at the same time, it is also still maintaining its hardline stance. So the message is dual. It's saying that we're managing the economic fallout, but we are also not losing face politically.
So what's the momentum behind this? What's driving this quiet backpedaling that you're describing? Why not just revise the policy openly?
Well, it's two reasons. It's really about control. It's about optics. China's economy still relies heavily in the U.S. in two particular distinct areas, and that's in semiconductors and biotech. Beijing also wants to look tough, especially when you have a country imposing 145% tariffs on you. So these quiet exemptions will give them some flexibility in terms of portraying their narrative strength.
Right. And, I want to talk about the ripple effects, the knock-on effects. How does this impact export-driven Asian economies like South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam?
Yeah, it's going to be a relief for them because these countries are key players in the regional supply chain, semiconductors, electronics, machine parts. So if U.S. inputs were actually locked out of China, this could create a ripple effect, like you say, on them. Take Taiwan, for example. Now, Taiwan supplies advanced chips to the U.S. Now, these chips then get integrated into systems and then sold to China. So if these products are then blocked by the U.S. to China, or if the tariffs become too high for them to import to China, well, this could have that ripple effect that you spoke of.
So digest everything for us and tell us what the business leaders, what investors should be looking out for.
Right. So three things in particular. One is sector-specific exemption. So pharmaceuticals, advanced manufacturing. What is China going to do next when it comes to these strategic industries? Next is supply chain adjustments. So if the exemptions become formalized, we don't know that for a fact yet, could this also stabilize procurement for regional firms at large? And finally, how regional firms themselves are responding. So we're going to see, especially in Vietnam, which has been de facto manufacturing site for China, whether they will be absorbing a lot of that relocation of manufacturing.
All right. You're going to take us to the break?
Yes, and I'll be back with more business news on East Asia tonight. China's manufacturing activity slides into contraction territory as the trade war with the U.S. starts to bite. And China Wanke shares recoup their earlier losses after they initially fell in response to the company's earnings. More on that when we come back.
Welcome back, everyone. Roland is here again with us for more business news. And it looks like tariffs are still on the radar, Roland. What are the signs coming out of China?
Right. Well, China's factory activity has slipped into the worst contraction in more than a year as higher U.S. tariffs hit factories and exporters. Official manufacturing PMI fell into contraction territory last month, missing estimates. Authorities cited higher base from the previous month and rapid changes in external environment for the drop. Meanwhile, the exporter-oriented private Taixi number also edged lower. Chinese factories have been caught in the crosshairs of the escalating trade war with the U.S. Many of them are suffering from sliding orders and production suspensions and are actively looking for alternative markets. To help Chinese exporters, Beijing has laid out plans to help struggling firms access loans and boost consumption, but it stopped short of rolling out more aggressive stimulus. Mainland Chinese markets ending the day mixed with investor sentiment clouded by those disappointing PMI figures, the Shanghai Composite finishing in the red despite gains seen in Shenzhen. The Hang Seng Index has recouped its losses after banks dragged the markets down earlier in the session. Both China Merchants Bank and ICBC among a handful of stocks lower after their latest financial results. China Wanke posted steeper losses in the first quarter as the state-backed property developer approved a plan to sell A shares representing 0.61% of its total share capital. The company's net loss in the first quarter came in at $852 million. A year ago, the figure had been just $50 million. Now, under pressure from the property slump in China, Wanke launched a senior management reshuffle in January. This increased state oversight and intervention to contain any non-payment risks. Looking at the market reaction, Wanke's Hong Kong listed shares dropped as much as 2.9% in early trade, while shares listed in Shenzhen eased 2.6%. Both shares recouped those losses throughout the day, ending the day only marginally in the red. Insurance giant AIA has reported a 13% rise in its first quarter value of new business, driven largely by Chinese buyers purchasing offshore policies in Hong Kong. The territory is one of the insurer's largest contributors. VONB coming out of Hong Kong saw an annual increase of 16% on year. Now, on a whole, the company reported value of new business at nearly $1.5 billion. Now, the VONB is a key barometer of future growth and gauges expected profits from new premiums. The Hong Kong-listed insurer, which focuses on Asian markets, say the continent's growing population, low insurance penetration, and limited welfare coverage are key growth drivers for its business. Shares of the company ending the day solidly in the green, up more than 6.5%. Samsung Electronics reported better than expected profit in the first quarter as customers rush to purchase smartphones and chips ahead of U.S. tariffs. Samsung's operating profit rose 1.2% on year to nearly $5 billion for the quarter. Now, that's from a record quarterly sales of $55 billion that was up 10% from a year earlier. The increased sales were driven by the rebound in demand for PC memory as well as smartphones. Samsung's key customers from Apple to Lenovo hastened shipments to the U.S. over the first quarter to sidestep Trump's tariffs. However, the world's largest memory chip maker did not give its earnings outlook for the current quarter. It says growing macroeconomic uncertainties due to recent global trade tensions and slowing global economic growth had made it difficult to predict future performance. Toyota Industries shares hitting a new one-year high today after they extended their gains on news of a potential buyer to take the company private. Now, Toyota Industries shares did not trade for most of Monday due to a glut of orders that sent the stock up 23%. Tokyo markets were closed on Tuesday for a public holiday, and when the market came online today, well, Toyota Industries climbed roughly 5% from Monday's close. Now, Toyota Industries is, of course, Toyota Motor's largest subsidiary and a major shareholder in the Japanese automaker. Now, Bloomberg reported that Toyota Motor chairman Akio Toyoda is seeking to buy out the subsidiary. Toyota Motor said in a statement it is considering various possibilities. Toyota Industries said in a statement on the same day the company is considering all possibilities. And that'll do it for business. Jill.
Now, Roland, I don't know if you've been a victim of scams, but we have an interesting story coming up on East Asia Tonight. Our Taiwan correspondent speaking with a victim of trafficking and cross-border scam operations who managed to escape his captors. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversees the first test firing of a weapon system on board its newest warship. This is East Asia Tonight. Here are the headlines we're following. U.S. President Donald Trump hails his achievements as he marks 100 days in office, despite a raft of opinion polls showing more Americans disapproving of his performance. China is reportedly creating a list of U.S. products that it would exempt from its 125% levies. Authorities are said to have reached out discreetly to companies to better gauge the impact of the tariff war on the country. This based on a report by Reuters. And factory activity in China contracts the most in a year as factories and exporters get caught in the crosshairs of Beijing's escalating trade war with the US. South Korea's spy agency has revealed that some 600 North Korean soldiers have been killed while fighting for Russia against Ukraine. Now, that's out of a total of 15,000 troops deployed in 2 phases. Pyongyang is believed to have suffered some 4,700 casualties so far, including both injuries and deaths. They are also said to have gained fighting experience.
북한군은 참전 6개월이 지나면서 초반에 미숙함이 줄어들고 무인기 등 신형 무기, 장비 사용에 익숙해지면서 전투력이 상당히 향상된 것으로 분석되고 있습니다.
Earlier this week, North Korea confirmed for the first time that it had sent troops to aid Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin separately thanked Pyongyang for its participation, claiming that it helped Moscow regain control of its territory. Seoul says Pyongyang appears to have received technical assistance on spy satellites, drones and anti-air missiles from Moscow in exchange for their troops and weapons. The spy agency said that some 2,000 combatants have been brought back to North Korea this year and are reportedly held in isolation in Pyongyang and other parts of the country. Separately, the bodies of fallen soldiers were cremated locally in Russia before being shipped back to North Korea. Intelligence officials say it has yet to detect signs of another troop deployment, but could not rule out such a possibility of further involvement in the conflict by Pyongyang. North Korea has reportedly conducted its first test firing of a new warship weapons system. State media KCNA says the test was overseen by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Over the weekend, Pyongyang unveiled its new warship, which some analysts say could carry out short-range nuclear missiles. North Korea previously said the vessel was equipped with, quote, the most powerful weapons and would be in operation early next year. KCNA reported that the new vessel tested various weapons, including ship-to-ship missiles, automatic guns and jamming systems. Cross-border scam centres operating along the Thai-Myanmar border continue to draw international concern as reports of trafficking and abuse persist. CNA's Taiwan correspondent Victoria Gent sat down with a recent escapee to find out how he was lured by fake job offers and was detained and forced to carry out scams under threats of violence.
10 years into his career as a street performer, 27-year-old Xie Yuepeng was used to traveling for work. So when he saw a job posting in a Facebook group offering a gig in Thailand, he didn't think twice.
那我也毕竟也没有去过泰国，所以我想说，抱持着试看看的心态去投履历。那并且在跟对方在洽谈的过程中，让我也感觉到说，跟台湾的这些厂商的一些需要的那些流程基本上是一模一样的，所以就是直接答应了对方。
The first sign of trouble came when the car carrying him and his recruiter crossed into Myanmar.
从上了 缅甸的领土，他们就开始有一些像比如说武装分子会就是在你四周围，然后一路开车载着你。然后我是直接被7、8个士兵直接压制，并且把我身上所有东西全部都抢走，然后把我手上就直接铐上了手铐。那铐上手铐之后，就这样子一路就这样子被铐了5天。
Mr. Xie was then beaten and forced to learn the methods used to scam unsuspecting victims online. He said he pretended to comply just to survive while planning for his escape. It took weeks before he finally reached the outside world, slipping crucial intel to his friends, who wasted no time turning it into a rescue operation that brought him back. He was one of the lucky ones, according to authorities.
国人他疑似受困，但在海外被胁迫从事诈骗的这个活动、不法活动的这个资料，我们的数据大概是从111年到现在，大概有1000多人，大概1050位左右的这些人民来报案。那在这1000多人当中呢，其实有大概600多位，我们已经协助跟各单位去协助他回国。
Taiwan's Criminal Investigation Bureau says most victims were lured through social media or by friends into supposed job offers that turned into a trap. The Taiwan government has been ramping up rescue efforts, working with NGOs, police liaisons, and local authorities, especially in Southeast Asia.
包括说，比如像泰国，那我们会跟泰国的警方有这些联系。那在柬埔寨呢，虽然他跟我们没有这个邦交，我们也会透过 NGO 或是台商的团体来去协助救援。
3 months since his rescue, street performer Xie Yuepeng is still haunted by nightmares and numbness from being shackled. He says if one pays attention, the red flags are hard to overlook.
人身安全比较重要。如果当下那个时候我发现了那些事情，发现那些蛛丝马迹的话，我立刻就直接暂停了所有的行程，并且我直接离开那个地方，也不去接这个份工作，就算是给人家开天窗也好。
Authorities estimate around 300 Taiwanese are still trapped in scam compounds abroad. And while rescue missions continue, stories like Mr. Xie serve as a warning that in this digital age, danger is just a click away.
Well, Victoria joins us for more from Taipei on this story. Victoria, what a horrific experience. I'm wondering, how do traffickers actually target their victims and who end up being the most vulnerable?
Yeah, what's really shocking is how normal everything seems at first. Now, these traffickers are smart. They know exactly who to target. A lot of the victims are young people like Xie, who's done overseas jobs before. So they're not completely new to traveling for work. That actually makes them more confident. And that's what these syndicates take advantage of. They will post ads on Facebook saying things like, urgent opening, great pay, travel included. And they talk to you like a legit recruiter. They will flatter you, create a sense of urgency, and make it feel like a normal job process. And that's what happened to Xie. He said everything felt just like how he deals with clients in Taiwan, and nothing felt out of the ordinary until he was already across the border. So it's not just vulnerable people that they're targeting. It's really anyone who's open to working abroad and not asking the right questions.
Yeah, well, in Mr. Xie's case, he managed to finally get out. But I hate to think what happens to those who try and actually fail to escape. Are there reports of even harsher punishments or even disappearances in these compounds?
Yes, it's actually very terrifying. Xie actually told me about 2 escape attempts. The first one is that he had a few others try to sneak out on New Year's Eve, thinking that the guards might be drunk, but it didn't work. And the second time, he was caught trying to gather information to help others escape. And that got him thrown into an isolation room. Now, other victims have told similar stories. If you get caught trying to escape, they punish you hard with beatings, isolation. Sometimes they even sell you off to a worse compound. Now, Xie was locked in a dark room, handcuffed for 5 days. He said that the guards kept threatening him and saying that the place was surrounded by landmines and that soldiers would shoot anyone who tried to run. He has even seen people disappear after their attempted escape. So yeah, escape isn't just hard, it's dangerous. And that fear keeps a lot of people from even trying. Jill?
Hey, really appreciate that story, Victoria. Thank you very much. That was CNA's Victoria Jen, live from Taipei. Now, coming up on East Asia tonight, US President Donald Trump hails his achievements as he marks 100 days in office despite falling ratings. And Singapore's general election taking place this Saturday. We have the updates from the campaign trail. US President Donald Trump is marking his 100th day in office, battling falling ratings. But he said it is the most successful 100 days of any US administration. His signature tariffs led the charge, with constant changes sparking seismic shifts in the international trading order. Critics call it chaos and confusion, but Mr. Trump's own Treasury chief says it is simply strategic uncertainty. On his 100th day, the president reversed course on auto tariffs, offering some respite to automakers from overlapping levies and a 2-year grace period to shift supply chains back to the U.S. The change comes as he took to the stage for a rally in Michigan, which is near Detroit, home to several major automakers.
After decades of politicians who destroyed Detroit to build up Beijing, you finally have a champion for workers in the White House. And instead of putting China first, I'm putting Michigan first, and I'm putting America first. In 100 days, we have delivered the most profound change in Washington in nearly 100 years.
And rival Democrats kept up their attacks, accusing Mr. Trump of leading a sinking ship and pushing for a dangerous budget that will disrupt nearly $500 billion of federal funds.
America is less safe and more expensive than it was 100 days ago. Trump's reckless tariffs are going to make high price of groceries, gas, housing, utilities, clothing, electronics, and other essential goods even worse.
Nick Harper takes a look at President Trump's first 100 days amid growing international concern that his policies and rhetoric are fast eroding trust in the world's largest economy.
Honorable Donald John Trump.
100 days of dramatic difference. Trump's shock and awe second term has delighted Republicans and dismayed Democrats. For many, both domestically and globally, it comes down to one overriding issue: trust. Something the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt believes the president deserves.
Trust in President Trump. He knows what he's doing.
But critics and analysts, like Council on Foreign Relations senior fellow Esther Brimmer, argue trust is in short supply, in particular among global allies, shocked by the pace of change in the US.
So it is unsettling, certainly, to allies to see the United States trying to change policy in multiple areas, and to have the United States advancing a radically different approach in national security, in economics, and in the social norms at the same time is incredibly disruptive. And so we have to see, where do we go from here, because the alternatives are not good.
Supporters like Republican strategist John Feary admit Donald Trump has shaken things up, but maintain a different approach was sorely needed.
The president campaigned on being a disruptor, and boy, is he a disruptor. He has disrupted everything about Washington, from DOGE to trade tariff policy, all the way down the line. He's completely changing how we look at Washington. And some people love it, and some people don't love it, but he's done exactly what he promised he was going to do, and that is disrupt Washington.
China, first row. China.
Among those promises kept, upending long-standing trade relations.
Japan, 46%.
Not even the US's closest allies like Japan, South Korea and India have been spared sweeping tariffs. But changing rates and tariff pauses have caused further confusion and uncertainty. Their on-again, off-again nature has destabilized global markets and forced countries into negotiations. Chinese goods now face 145% tariffs. The president says it's needed to rebalance America's trade relations. But some analysts view it as a self-defeating own goal, which could create a strategic opening for China. Already, President Xi Jinping has been courting southeastern nations like Vietnam, Malaysia and Cambodia, while Beijing's trade minister met with his Japanese and South Korean counterparts for their first economic dialogue in 5 years.
Countries, if they want to trust China more than the United States, that's really up to them. I think at the end of the day, America is a better ally for most of these countries. And the fact is that things have to change. We're not going to continue the status quo forever.
We gave you, through this stupid president,
Further worrying allies is President Trump's reversal of US relations with Russia and Ukraine as he pushes for a peace deal that appears to favor Moscow. The president has also flirted with expansionism, threatening to make Greenland and Canada part of the US. While Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, using Signal to share sensitive military information and disparage European allies, has further undermined transatlantic trust. A rapid reset that was long overdue, or a sledgehammer approach that's done irreparable harm. So much has changed in 100 days, but the lasting effects, for better or worse, will be felt for years to come. Nick Harper, CNA, Washington.
In Singapore, 3 days out from Saturday's general election, Natalie Edwards is here with an update. Things must be heating up.
Sure is, Jill. Well, Education Minister Chan Chun Sing says positive campaigning is about presenting options and not about riling up emotions without solutions. He was responding to questions about opposition parties alleging, quote, negative politics in this campaign. Sherilyn Seah has more.
An election that's about how candidates can help Singapore overcome challenges and seize new opportunities in a troubled world. That's how Education Minister Chan Chun Sing frames the core issues of the campaign. While he acknowledges that any contest will have arguments back and forth, he has issued a call for all parties to uphold standards.
I really hope to see that throughout this debate, discussions, we will generate not just heat, but light. Light in the sense of the type of solutions that we can present to fellow Singaporeans to help them make a decision as to who can better represent them in Parliament, which team can better help Singapore and Singaporeans get through all the challenges.
Mr. Chan took issue with a viewpoint that surfaced in this campaign, although he stopped short of singling out the party in question.
The argument goes something like this. Team A has done well. And because they have done well, they don't need so many good players. Team B has not done as well. So we should reward them with more players. Now, I think fair-minded Singaporeans will know that there's something not very correct with this line of argument.
Regarding political leadership, he cited something he said he had learned early in his public service career.
As leaders, we must be the first to take responsibility and last to claim credit. First to take responsibility, last to take credit. And I find it rather amusing to hear some of this during the debate that display the exact opposite of this. That sometimes, when some people did not do anything, and we have a good outcome, they claim that, oh, I contributed by not objecting.
Mr. Chan was speaking during a walkabout in the greater Tanjong Pagar area with his campaign teammates, including new face Fu Zhexiang. The former civil servant says he will push to strengthen multi-generational bonds and listen to all residents regardless of age.
If it's in the interest of the greater majority of residents, I will speak up for them. But that's obviously different from saying that I will say everything that they share with me, because sometimes the individual interest is not always the same as the interest of the general public. And I also seek the understanding of everyone that there will also be a role for me to play in terms of explaining the government policies.
A Workers' Party candidate, Andre Lau, says it would be hypocritical for him not to hold himself to the same standards of accountability and transparency he's run his campaign on. This follows his apology for, quote, completely inappropriate language in his private telegram messages leaked on social media.
I was very clear with party leadership that I will be apologizing. Of course, they offered me some advice about, like how to go about doing it. But to me, it was very clear to me that an apology would be forthcoming, and I needed to give my honest and be accountable to the Jalan Kayu residents.
Mr. Lau is up against the PAP's Ng Chee Meng in Jalan Kayu SMC. The first-time candidate says he learnt of the leaked messages before speaking at a rally on Tuesday night. He published a statement within 3 hours after that. The 34-year-old Lau says that the leaked messages were from a private group chat dating back to the COVID-19 period. Now, he also addressed one of the screenshots, which shows him swearing about a resident he called while doing Meet the People session work.
I'm very sorry for the language I've used, and yeah, I don't want to give excuses or offer, I don't want to delve too deep into the language I used in the past. That was a different time of my life. I believe I've matured since then, and I hope voters can see that.
The People's Alliance for Reform has urged the People's Action Party to look at Malaysia's unity government. This was in response to comments made by Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong, who said it was a ridiculous argument that the People's Action Party can lose ministers without weakening the government.
Apparently, he's not aware that, ministers, they can actually be seconded from the opposition as well. Other countries, even our neighbor Malaysia, they actually have ministers seconded from the opposition party. As long as we have, as long as the opposition MPs, they are actually eligible to be ministers.
The opposition candidate for Jalan Besar GRC was speaking on the sidelines of a walkabout at a food centre. Mr. Chu also took aim at the GST vouchers as a way for the government to ease the burden of the GST hike.
The vouchers are basically used up almost 1 month after they have been issued. So what about the next 6 months or next how many months when the government, PAP government decides to issue the next batch of vouchers? This is not practical, and the vouchers also, let me tell you, the vouchers are actually meant for a whole household.
And that is the latest on the upcoming general election campaign in Singapore. In the lead up to the 3rd of May, my colleagues and I will be with you every day with standout events of the day. On that note, Jill, it's back to you.
Thanks so much, Atali. Now, one more story before we go. Close to the border, separating the two Koreas, lies a unique spot for coffee lovers. South Korea's Daeon Soup Cafe is a hidden gem with a view overlooking the north. Located less than 2 kilometers from Paju City, owners of the cafe have had to construct the property with a bunker and fortified positions for tanks just to obtain a building permit. The bunker, though commonly seen as a symbol of combat, has been reimagined with paintings depicting peace and freedom. But it's not the only cafe near the demilitarized zone. A Starbucks is nestled on an observation deck not far from the capital, Seoul. With a decent pair of binoculars, patrons can even sneak a peek into North Korea. Local authorities have been leveraging the historical significance of the site to boost tourism. That's it for East Asia Tonight this Wednesday. Don't forget your headlines anytime, cna.asia. Check us out on Facebook, also YouTube. Bye for now.